Welcome, everyone. This is Under the Gum Tree's 13-year anniversary, and we are so excited to have so many of you join us, and we're so excited to have all the readers here to share with you tonight, and thank you. Just thank you. I'm Janna Marlies Maron. I'm the editor and publisher of Under the Gum Tree, and I am also the founding editor, so I started the magazine 13 years ago in 2011, and here we are, and sometimes I can't believe that it's been as long as it has been. And I would not be here without the volunteer staff and Dorothy Rice, who's sitting next to me. We're sitting next to each other. There's my hand showing up in her video. So you all just came back from breakout rooms and had an opportunity to connect and interact a little bit with fans of nonfiction. And I don't know if you guys have ever been to a virtual reading. Sometimes it can be a little awkward and a little weird because somebody's going to sit here and read for you. And then when they're done, at least in the readings that I've attended virtually, it's just silence. And there's no collective appreciation for the author. So we're going to try something. And that is, let me just give you a little bit of like logistics and kind of like how to on number one, if you would please keep your mics muted so that we don't get feedback or audio like just happened from somebody. I'm not sure who that is. I can't see who's muted and who's not very easily right now. So if you haven't already, go ahead and mute yourself and stay muted. We may have time for Q&A at the end, and if that's the case, you would be welcome to unmute and ask a question. But for reacting to the readers, there's a couple ways you can do this. First thing you can do is just do jazz hands in your view so we can see the reaction from you. You can actually clap and we just see you reacting like this. You can use the emoji reactions at the bottom of your screen. So if you see that right at the bottom, there's a heart icon with the word react, and you just click the little arrow. I'm sorry, you don't click the arrow, you just click the button, and it'll come up with some emoji options. And if I click the emoji, it shows up in the corner of my window like that. But there's also another option where you can react with effect. You can send it with effect. And if I do that, then the emoji comes up like this in my whole window. So you can do either one of those reactions. And of course you can comment. So please do use the comments, the chat box. You can type in the chat box to say, yay, we love you, or specific comments about what you loved and appreciated about what you heard from the reader. So the other thing I want to try is, let me see something here real quick. We're trying something new, which is I have audio of applause. Okay, so we're going to pretend like somebody has just finished reading and you're all going to react however you want to react. So thank you. I just finished reading. Now you all react. Okay, thank you. So we're going to try that. We're going to try that after the readers. They'll get audio applause through the computer audio, and you are giving them the visual applause however you choose. Okay, sound good? All right. With that, we're going to get started, and we have two readers who unfortunately were not able to be here live, and so they sent us a recording of their reading, and we're going to also try to share that video, and the first person is joining by video. So we're going to try that one first because it's a 3-minute reading, see how that goes, and then we will get into the rest of the folks who are here with us live, okay? So first up is a writer whose work has appeared in Creative Nonfiction's anthology Same Time Next Week, Brainchild, Literary Mama, Under the Sun, Poetica, River Teeth, and many others. She lives in Israel and is an editor at Under the Sun, a journal of creative nonfiction. Joining us by video recording, reading her piece, Squinting in the Light, here is Miriam Mandel Levy. And I will share her video here.
Hi, I'm Miriam, and I'm sorry I'm not with you this evening. It's the middle of the night here in Israel where I live, but I want to thank Dorothy and Jenna for kindly giving me the opportunity to read my piece. It's called Squinting in the Light. I forgot to remind my husband to water our houseplant while I was abroad. It's a small, unassuming plant with a dozen or so coarse, oblong leaves. I don't even know its name, but I was proud I'd kept it alive as long as I had. When I came home, its leaves were so thin and limp, I thought it was dead. One day, my son called from college to say he didn't feel well and was coming home. I thought he meant he had the flu. When I opened the door, my blood ran cold. The hood of his sweatshirt was pulled over his eyes. In its shadow, I saw a haunted face. I castigated myself for the oversight. The plant was such a small, helpless thing. It asked for so little. I parted its leaves, poked its earth, drizzled water here and there, but it showed no signs of recovery. Diagnosed with major depression, my son took dozens of medications, suffered ruinous side effects, and languished for months on psychiatric wards. When he came home, he lay on his bed, the couch, the floor, staring at the ceiling, desiccating. The plant was nearly lifeless, the potted earth spongy and depleted. Yet, 2 of the leaves were green, not brown. They clung to the planter like fingers on a ledge. Though I wasn't sure he could hear me, I told my son that I loved him. I told him not to give up, that one day he would feel better. Mostly, I sat with him. I checked the plant daily. One day, those 2 leaves lifted and unfurled. In time, my son's expression eased. He seemed attentive to the world, as if he'd returned after a long absence to find it changed. I don't understand how it happened. Divine mercy, finally the right medication cocktail, a fierce hope, strength of will, the cumulative effect of every desperate measure. Whatever the reason, a small tattoo of a semicolon appeared on his wrist. He said it meant his story wasn't over. The plant sits on a pine chest in a sunny corner of my living room. Though it hasn't outgrown its planter and no flowers have bloomed, one day soon I believe they will. Just yesterday, 3 new shoots like tiny romaine lettuce leaves pushed up from the plant's center, squinting in the light. Today my son is a photographer. He lives with a dog named Blue. Life can be hard for him. He's so vulnerable to the elements. But his landscapes and skyscapes, quiet country roads, fiery sunsets, starry skies, attest to the beauty he sees in the world. His portraits capture love in all its configurations. They are defiant with joy.
Thank you, Miriam. I know it's time for you to clap for her, but I have to get my audio.
I didn't hear anything. Did you guys?
Wait a minute.
Not yet.
You didn't hear her?
Did no one hear her?
No, we
Dorothy heard her. Some people heard. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. People heard. Okay.
Who didn't hear her?
Who didn't hear her?
I didn't.
1. But you can hear me right now.
Yes.
Oh,
Okay. I'm not sure why that would happen. Why some people could hear her and others not. Is there more than one person who couldn't hear?
Oh, well, never mind. I just wondered what was going on.
Okay. Okay.
I couldn't hear at the first half, and then I clicked something up at the top, and then it worked. So
Okay. Thank you, Leo. Do you know what it was that you clicked?
No, but all of a sudden the author's, page showed up and I could see who was reading and hear, but I couldn't before.
Okay. So
It
what
was-
I'm doing for those videos is that I'm sharing my screen and my computer audio. So it should come up in my video box. Like wherever you see me, that's where the video should come up when I share it. So let me try now. We're gonna give Miriam the applause that she deserves. Give me 1 second here. I gotta get my sharing right here. And we're gonna say, thank you, Miriam. Awesome. Okay. And those of you who could not hear Miriam, were you able to hear that audio just now? Thumbs up. Okay. Okay. So that's that. I'm sharing my computer audio to the Zoom, and that's what should work. Okay. So we're going to continue now with our next reader who is here with us. She is joining us from Seattle and is a retired environmental educator. She has written about the Maasai in Kenya, cockroaches in Costa Rica, and geology in Alaska. Her writing has appeared in the Corvus Review, Shark Reef, A Plate of Pandemic, and other literary journals. She has an essay forthcoming in Canary, and her essay about gardening during the pandemic will be anthologized by Wild Librarian Press in late 2024. Welcome, Carol Raitt.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here and to be able to read my essay to all of you. The Great Cheesecake Bake-Off. I stood in my pantry, assessing 2 3-foot-long shelves, sagging under the weight of cookbooks, a lifetime's worth of recipes, perhaps 2 lifetimes. I'm done with serious cooking. As a single 75-year-old woman, I would rather order takeout and dive into a juicy novel than simmer fish heads and shrimp tails for bouillabaisse. Simplify, simplify, simplify. Isn't that everyone's mantra today? It was time to trim my collections. What surprised me was how easily I could scan and bid adieu to most cookbooks before I donated them to my neighborhood little free library. My contribution added to the book bank's eclectic and burgeoning collection. Spiritual self-help guides, bodice rippers, a handyman's guide to home electrical to repair, crime thrillers, and a how-to guide for keeping city chickens. I fixed my gaze on a circa 1970s royal blue plastic recipe box. Lifting its lid revealed a trove of grease-spattered, ink-smeared index cards. Each recipe a connective thread to people and places from my past. Irish soda bread from a former neighbor, Mary. Enchilada stack from my friend Kendra. My dad's shrimp remoulade. Aunt Anne's decadent chocolate fudge. Grandma's oatmeal cookies and powdered sugar dusted apple cake. I closed my eyes and I saw myself, an 8-year-old girl standing near Grandma, impatient to lick the batter spoon. Thumbing through the box between recipe dividers labeled cake, casserole, and cookies, a tattered scrap of yellow cardboard caught my attention. A side panel from a box of Argo cornstarch that read, New York cheesecake. I thought about the last time I'd made cheesecake, except it wasn't me, it was my husband. In the early 1970s, weeks after Sam and I moved to Seattle, Dad suggested a cheesecake bake-off between the two of them. My father, the chef and restaurateur, who claimed to make the best goddamn cheesecake in the world, and Sam, my husband, the one-time professional baker turned IBM executive. Sam baked authentic New York cheesecake, not that slimy, low-profile imposter served in most restaurants, a dessert smothered by crushed canned pineapple or syrupy sweet cherries. My husband's cheesecake needed no embellishment. High and light, Sam's cheesecake tasted like it had been made by angels. My dad's cheesecake would be stiff competition. The 2 men shook hands. My dad returned to his home. Sam and I got to work. Dad said he would return in 24 hours for a taste test. It has been more than 50 years since I copied the ingredients from the cornstarch box and took my list to the store. Nabisco's famous chocolate wafers, 1 pound cottage cheese, 1 pound cream cheese, granulated sugar, eggs, lemon juice, vanilla, butter, 1 pint sour cream. It was my job to pulverize the chocolate wafers and press cookie dust into the bottom of a greased springform pan. I lined up cookies between layers of wax paper, smashed them with a rolling pin, then pressed the crushed cookie bits into the prepared pan. I pushed cottage cheese against a sieve until it was nearly dry. I wasn't a baker, and I was content to be Sam's sous chef. Sam added ingredients into the stainless bowl of a new KitchenAid mixer, our first major purchase as a married couple. I watched the paddle blend egg yolks, the cream, and cottage cheeses, vanilla, and sour cream. It looked like thick pancake batter. Sam gave me a hug. The smoother the batter, the better the cheesecake, he said. He poured the velvety mixture into the prepared pan. Our home smelled of chocolate, sugar, and sweetness as the cheesecake rose high in the oven and developed a golden patina. Across town, my father baked his own cheesecake. Had he used the same recipes? We didn't ask. The next day, Dad stood at our front door, proffering his cheesecake. It was beautiful. He swept past me, grinning ear to ear, walked into our kitchen and placed his cheesecake on the tile counter next to Sam's. It was time for a taste test. The bakers loosed the cakes from their pans. The 2 cakes were nearly identical, each with a smooth, light caramel-colored surface and signature chocolate cookie crumb crust. 2 cakes perfect enough for the cover of Bon Appetit. The knife cut smoothly through the cooled, rich cakes. I slid small slices onto our plates. We sampled my dad's cheesecake. It was dense, rich, tangy. We tasted Sam's. It was delicious and nearly identical in flavor to my father's cheesecake. Though my dad swore that his version was the more authentic of the 2, we all agreed that the winner was too close to call. 4 years after the bake-off, Dad died. Ernie was one hell of a chef, a man who didn't need cookbooks to create a gourmet meal. His culinary skills were eclipsed only by his love for sharing the food he prepared. And yes, my dad enjoyed friendly competition. I'll never forget him walking into our modest rental home, carrying his cheesecake and displaying an air of confidence like he was Seattle's answer to Emeril Lagasse or James Beard. When my husband was diagnosed with cancer in 1990, our baking days ended. Sam was too weak to partake in our yearly epic holiday baking event, and I lacked incentive to bake holiday cookies without him. For the first time in years, we didn't make our rich and boozy, adult-only fruitcake, a version notably superior to the commercial and oft-despised Christmas confection. I thumbed through the recipe box. Fruitcake recipe had vanished. It is better, perhaps, to leave some things in the past.
Thank you, Carol.
Thank you.
Okay, next reader. Next reader is a writer based in New York City. He blends wit and insight to explore the quirks of everyday life, offering readers a fresh and entertaining perspective, and he's working on a collection of humorous essays. Welcome, Clay Halton.
Hi there, everybody. Thank you for coming. This is my first publication, so I'm very excited to get to read it to you all. This essay, the portion of the essay that I'll be reading to you is called Saying It. When I was 10, I had a white rabbit named Petey that was scared to death. It's likely the fact that Petey grew up in a cage that killed him. When he was forced to confront actual danger, it was too much for his heart. The pen I grew up in was self-constructed. I started building it when I was a child and had it nearly fully completed by my early 20s. My cage was meant to protect me from a secret I'd always known, that I was gay. For most of my life, I thought I was the only one who knew. The reality is that almost everyone knew and pretended they didn't. In hindsight, a lifelong obsession with Kirsten Dunst's movie career probably gave things away. When you grow up in a small town in Missouri, you become aware early on that physical violence is a likely outcome of being perceived as gay. I also knew from the news that there was the possibility of being murdered, and at the least, you're guaranteed some teasing. My way of dealing with all of these threats was to ignore my sexuality. By age 20, though, I realized I wanted to live as a proud Kirsten Dunst lover rather than a closeted one. Not surprisingly, 20 years of refusing to address my sexuality didn't put me in a position to come bursting out of the closet. Why did I have to talk about my sexuality when no one else had to? An online friend suggested I try to say, "I'm gay," out loud as practice. I was willing to try, but I had to find the right place. I needed someplace soundproof. The only place where I felt truly safe and alone was my car. In 2013, I drove a red Chevy S10 pickup truck. People wouldn't suspect a person with a truck was gay, right? I took a breath. Okay, let's do this. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. I felt sick. I set goals. When I get to the next stoplight, I'm saying it. When the stoplight arrived, I was as mute as ever. Next stoplight for sure. I blew straight through it without opening my mouth. Then, what do you know? There were no more stoplights left on the drive to campus. During moments like this, I'd turn up the radio to clear my head. In 2013, Sarah Bareilles' new song, Brave, often began playing. I'd grown internally. It was an otherwise empowering pop anthem, but she seemed to be singing directly at me, nudging me to do the very thing I was terrified of doing, imploring me to let whatever was on my mind just fall out. God, the words were not even close to falling out. Maybe if I just said one word at a time, I could do it. Okay, I was halfway there. I only had to say one more word. Yeah. Just then, Sarah's voice cut through, reminding me to be brave and say what I want to say. Really, Sarah? I was in the middle of something. I didn't feel brave at all. The song had to be about coming out of the closet, right? What else could it be? How did she release this right when I wanted to come out? I tried not to let my thoughts spiral and open my mouth. But then there was Sarah again, the chorus blasting through my planned confession. She just couldn't stay out of it. And I was actually going to say at that time, now I couldn't because she interrupted. Once I'd properly berated Sarah for preventing me from coming out, I decided I'd simply have to wait another day to try again. Days, weeks, months passed. I obsessed over coming out while Brave became more and more popular. Every car ride, Sarah butted in, reminding me, "You're gay, you're gay." I did keep trying. And one day while driving, I enacted my smartest strategy yet. Say it before I could convince myself not to. The thought entered my head, and astonishingly, the words came out of my mouth, though I wouldn't say they fell out. I'm gay. I'd done it. I expected to feel joy and empowerment for finally saying it. I was surprised to feel only shame, and actually felt worse saying it out loud than it did in my mind. That had backfired. Despite this, I chose to keep saying it to myself alone while driving. Eventually, I went from "I'm gay" to "I'm gay" to "I'm gay." My stomach still twisted and my chest was tight, but the words were coming, which meant they might be speakable to another person soon. I did want to be brave. As I got closer to being completely out, I was met with nothing but support and happiness from everyone I told. And once I was finally completely out, I awaited the feeling of freedom and confidence that would come with it. But that feeling didn't come. Instead, feelings of discomfort remained. My thoughts driving to school moved on to how I would ever find someone to date. And if I did, was I actually supposed to introduce this person to friends and family? That sounded so gay. I continued driving, prophesizing various negative futures, imagining everyone's disappointment in me for continuing to be gay. I was back where I started, driving to school filled with torment. I had no idea I was thrashing in a see-through cage like my poor rabbit, Petey, terrified for my life. There was no dog on top of my cage barking down at me, threatening me, except maybe myself, reminding me over and over of all the bad that came along with being gay. I thought once I'd come out to everybody, the walls of the cage would crumble and I'd come barreling out. Instead, I crept out over the course of years, one finger at a time when I told friends and family, then one limb at a time as the years went on, and I pulled myself slowly over the edge. It took years of work on my self-esteem and personal growth to get me fully outside the pen, but once I was out there, I realized there was a lot more going on outside than there was inside. Now, it's impossible to fathom how I used to live in that cage, heart beating so fast with fear that it nearly exploded. If I look for the pen now, it's so small I can barely find it. It functions more as a museum. I think to visit it occasionally, only looking from the outside in. I don't plan on going inside. I don't think I'd fit now anyway.
Thank you, Clay. Thank you. That was wonderful. Our next reader lives near Boston, where she runs Journal of the Month, engages in disability advocacy and other community civic work, and lives with her husband and kids. Her essays and short fiction have appeared in the Washington Post, Poets and Writers magazine, and Creative Nonfiction magazine, among others. Please welcome Jenn Scheck-Kahn.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to hear all of your stories and to be included tonight. My essay is called On That Date. I miscarried in October, but what day? It was after our anniversary, but before the pumpkin carving party I hosted. I haven't asked Brian because what if he doesn't remember either? Both of us forgetting seems worse than just one of us, despite it being consistent with how we've always been. His skill is remembering geographical spaces, and mine is faces, but neither of us holds on to names or time with precision. At my husband's high school reunion, I met a couple with a similar problem. He said he wasn't a numbers person. He used patterns to remember family milestones. We got the dog in 00, our first was born in 02, and our second in 04. You see the pattern, 024. Another triad represented when he graduated from college, he met his wife, and they purchased their house. But the wedding, 99, 98, who knows, his wife said. She reached out her hand for mine. I'm Shauna. Meet my wife, Brian said with a palm in my direction. This is Jenn. I've always liked the sound of my name in his voice. In that one syllable, I hear romance. Something private is declared, the hidden insides of a locket revealed. The reunion organizer knocked against my shoulder. What are you talking about? She asked. I knew her a little, having had dinner with her and her husband once on a night when they'd hired a sitter. We're trying to guess when they married, I said. Her mouth gaped. It was 98. I was a bridesmaid. The dress is still in my closet. She started to push herself into the circle, but I intercepted her with the appetizer menu. Are you ordering? I asked. It was a defensive move. I felt protective of the couple's impracticality, even though I felt confident that had she told them the correct year, I could count on them to forget it again. I'm getting another beer, she said. You want something? No, thanks, I said, a pint of glass in my hand. I sucked at the straw and watched her turn to notice. "Are you pregnant?" she asked, her eyes on mine before flickering for a moment to my empty abdomen. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have asked that. I have a cold. Couldn't you see the pink-rimmed nose, hear my scratchy voice? I've had a cold all week." "You have every right to your privacy," she said. I thought of a plucky retort and held it like a dare. It was winter, and my body was still recovering from a miscarriage, my first. Not pregnant, I wanted to say, pointing at my uterus, infertile. With those words, I could have taken something from her that she didn't know she had to lose. That night, there were two kinds of people: those for whom the world presents a logical and desirable order, and everyone else. My empty uterus and dateless miscarriage placed me. Wasn't I better off not knowing the date, not affixing the miscarriage to a day that would return year after year? Otherwise, would that date come to identify the miscarriage as a name identifies a child? But something worse happened. The miscarriage attached itself to a person, a little girl I hardly know. For several seasons, Barbara's dog Maggie and my dog Toby chased each other by our local elementary school. Like us, Barbara and her husband Aaron worked in software, so we could talk about failed training attempts and clever forms of disobedience, as well as tech trends and people we knew in common. We liked them, and even though we once went to a party at their house, the circumstances for friendship hadn't promoted us beyond casual acquaintances. Something in kind wasn't reflected. The night we ran into them at a Barnes & Noble's was a twin to my conversation with Brian's "Are you pregnant?" friend, all of us vulnerable from something said or unsayable. Barbara and Aaron emerged from the health section. I find out later that she had just learned she was pregnant and had tried to disguise a copy of What to Expect When You're Expecting against her chest with casual conversation. "It's been a long time," she said. "How's Toby?" Neither Brian nor I noticed the book in her hands. I had my own reason for wanting to be concealed. I'd come to the bookstore to research PCOS, the condition that caused my infertility. In 6 months, I'd find out I was pregnant with the baby I'd later miscarry. Barbara said, "Maggie's been kicked out of doggy daycare." "How is that possible?" I asked. At the first brief pause in conversation, Aaron said, "Well, see you around." And we laughed awkwardly at his abruptness and then scattered. "What was that?" Brian asked me. "Do we need the dogs in order to have a decent conversation?" Barbara explained that night from her point of view at the end of her first trimester as we walked together to the dog park. I said nothing about myself letting her take full responsibility. Instead, I congratulated her. I asked her the usual questions of a new mom-to-be. Their baby arrived 9 weeks early. In between doctor's visits and surgeries, Barbara kept her wider circle informed through social media. "Linda is 1 week old," she wrote, exactly a week after a D&E removed the embryo I had miscarried at the very same hospital where Linda was born. Now Linda's age and growth marked time for me, my own age and growth from the day I began again. When I bump into Barbara on the bike path with Linda in her stroller, Maggie panting beside it, I think of our coincidence. I imagine a caricature of Brian's friend from the reunion, opening a calendar and pointing first to Barbara's uterus and then to mine. If I told Barbara, I'd represent bad luck or worse, a person trying to steal from the miraculous day of her daughter's birth, miraculous despite the physical complications that continue to follow throughout the first year of her life. What if, on that night at Barnes & Noble's, we discovered each other not by the escalator that Aaron eyed impatiently, but in the health section, where my area, women's health, emptied into Barbara's pregnancy, our secrets side by side? Might that have begun a trail of trust, leading us to the same hospital on the same day? Would the coincidence impose a significance on us, exactly what we needed to nudge us into friendship? The next October, would I have found myself wearing a party hat with a bunch of mommies, feeling that I had had a baby, and it was on this death day, 1 year ago, that I lost the chance to know her and hear her name said in Brian's voice? Surely that would razor the date into memory. What we have is the better alternative. When I see Barbara, I ask the usual questions about baby, puppy, work, and home. Only I ask more questions than I should, feeling that I haven't yet said the thing that needs to be said for our conversation to end. Thank you.
Janna, you're muted.
Thank you. I muted myself and then forgot to unmute. Thank you, Jen. Next up, we have a first-generation American from Chicago's South Side. She misses her banana bike seat and old-timey ASMR like dialing a rotary phone and hopes to die before the robots completely take over, but is thankful to share the planet with the beauty makers in her life. She is an assistant professor of English at Indiana University Northwest in Gary. Please welcome Cecilia Villarruel.
Thanks. I'm going to read from my essay called The Pianist. 70 some odd years ago, a Mexican artist threw out a lifeline, and I was there the moment my tia caught it. Frida Kahlo's self-portrait, La Columna Rota, hangs in her blue house in Coyoacan. In the painting, over 3 dozen nails impale her naked body. A white column splits her torso in half. She wears a body cast to keep from breaking, and there are tears streaming down her face. The painting tells the story of the bus handrail that ripped through her body when she was a teenager. The bus had crashed, the handrail entered her back and came out through her vagina. Gold dust from an artisan's pouch sprinkled her body as Kahlo lay bleeding. Frida spent years recovering, in bed, in body casts, in hospitals having operation after operation, taking medications to numb the constant physical pain. She later lost a leg and every child she tried to have. She had a drinking problem and a husband who cheated on her. She was in constant pain, forever breaking, inside and out. But in this painting, through all that agony, she stands firm, displaying her shattered body without shame. Her arms are at her sides, her chest is bare, and though 8 nails pierce her face and 14 teardrops roll down her cheeks, she's got this fierce fucking look in her eyes, as if to say, I'm still here. 20 years ago, I went to Frida's blue house with my aunt, my tia Isa. Nobody knew where Isa's house was. We just knew she lived in Veracruz, hundreds of miles away from the rest of the family. Nobody had her phone number. They only knew she worked at the cultural center, so if there was ever an emergency, they would leave a message there. She didn't want the family to get in touch or know where she lived. She was embarrassed of how poor she was and ashamed of the alcoholic boyfriend who hit her. At least that's what my mother told me. I heard my aunts talk about how Isa shut down if they brought it up, if they asked about home. They say she never said a word about it, just shook her head or looked away until they changed the subject. My mother only saw her sisters every few years, and Isa didn't always show up. Whenever Mom saw Isa, she slipped money into her pockets. They didn't talk about her life. They never talked about a lot of things. There's a story everybody knows about Isa, but nobody ever brought it up around her. When she was young, Isa was in a convent in Guadalajara. Shortly before she was to take her vows, something terrible happened that made her leave the convent. She moved to Mexico City and became a prostitute. Nobody heard from her for several years. They say she had 2 children and gave them to a friend to raise. My family hardly saw Isa after that. I'd mostly heard the story of her sad life from my other aunts and my mom, but I didn't really know her. That's why I went to visit her. I didn't want to think of this woman, my blood, as a sad, old, chain-smoking victim of domestic violence. There had to be more to the story. There was. We met at the Veracruz Cultural Center, where she taught piano to teenagers. She looked like a much older version of my mother, dark and wrinkled with a husky cigarette voice. I sat in on one of her lessons and watched her with her student. I only knew what I'd heard, and I suppose I expected to see evidence of a hard life on her face or how she acted. But as she held her hands over the keys, pointed out finger placements to her pupil, and sat straight-backed with pride at the piano. All I saw was a musician. When the lesson was over, the student gave Isa a kiss on her cheek, and she called him mijo. After the lesson, we caught a bus to Mexico City. On the way, she told me stories of when she was young, how she believed the stars were made of ice, and that's why the night was colder than the day, and that rain was the stars melting. She laughed then. Her laugh was throaty, deep, and joyful. She told me while her sisters were interested in boys, dating, and gossip when they were young, she only wanted to spend time with the piano. She talked about her piano composer father, a grandfather I never knew. She couldn't remember a day he didn't play. He'd walk in circles, waving his hands about while humming, constantly composing in his head. Out of 7 sisters, she was the only one who picked it up. He was a chain smoker and an alcoholic, she told me, but he had a good heart. And when he was on his deathbed, much too young to die, she said she couldn't believe how many musicians filled their home. Everybody loved him. Everybody wanted to say goodbye. Everybody wanted to play for him. She said that when she plays for him. She never mentioned the children she abandoned, or the abusive man she lived with, or what happened at the convent, or anything about being a prostitute. When we walked into Frida's blue house, Isa glided her bony fingers along the rough blue walls. We walked up the stone steps, saw la columna rota, and stood there, staring. After some moments, I looked over and saw that Tia Isa was crying. No handrail had ever ripped through her, and she never had to be put in a body cast. My Tia Isa wasn't crying about any bus crash, but, like Frida, she knew about breaking inside. I took her hand in mine as her tears fell. We stood, quietly holding hands. I'm going to stop there.
Thank you, Cecilia. Okay, our next reader is joining us by video recording. She is a science writer with a portfolio ranging from technical to personal, writing for government, nonprofit, and academic institutions. Her recent publications include American Literary Review, the Chestnut Review, the Denver Museum of Natural History's Institute for Science and Policy, and Oceanography magazine. She is a degree candidate in the Johns Hopkins Advanced Academic Master's Program in Science Writing and has an MS and BS in Biology from Stanford University. Joining us by video recording, reading an excerpt of her piece, Sailing the Sagebrush Sea. Here is Charlotte Stevenson. As soon as I get her video up. Here we go.
Hi, I'm Charlotte Stevenson, and I'm going to read the last 5 minutes of my piece, Sailing the Sagebrush Sea. I just want to say thank you to Under the Gum Tree for publishing my work, and I'm honored to be part of this special 13th year anniversary celebration. Approaching the soccer fields, I can see the parking area is full. I decide to park farther down a dirt road, allowing us to take a walk through some sagebrush back to the fields. I step out of the car, sandy dirt crunching beneath my shoes. Behind us, a dry, silvery green sea stretches to the horizon, dwarfed by the cerulean sky. I can see how this landscape got the nickname, the Big Empty. But then I step forward, and previously invisible grasshoppers fling their bodies into the air, snapping their legs loudly. With another step, 3 ravens scold me for interrupting their meeting and rise skyward, croaking and flapping in synchronous circles. I return to the car and open Balin's door. He jolts. Hey, buddy, we're back at the soccer fields. He squints into the sunlight but doesn't answer. He gets out of the car and looks across the sage. I grab my backpack and hand him a chocolate milk and energy bar. I leave the fate of the cheddar, salami, and crackers in the past. It's not that we won't talk about what happened. We will. We always do. But he has to be in the right state of mind to reflect on triggers. Do you feel like you can play soccer? I ask him. No answer. But he begins walking into the sage. His hands stretch outward so we can feel the tickle of sagebrush tops as we follow a small animal trail winding among the bushes. The tops of the sagebrush are where the flowers are located, but they don't look like the flowers of other plants. They're pale and covered in a type of silver green casing, similar in color to the rest of the sagebrush plant. But they don't need to attract the attention of pollinators like other traditional flowering plants. Sage, just as it has adapted to keeping its leaves in frigid winter temps, adapted to dry summers with fibrous roots, and adapted to periodic fires, has adapted to this scoured landscape by letting the wind do all the pollination work. Suddenly, Balin darts to the right and skids up to a small hole in the ground, a cloud of dust rising around him. What is it? I ask. Lizard. What kind? Sagebrush lizard. Nice. I see a lot of holes around here. Are these all sagebrush lizard homes? No, they can be pygmy rabbits, burrowing owls, voles, snakes. Both relieved that he's speaking again and interested in the PBS nature special knowledge packed in his brain, I ask what else lives here. Lots of birds, the sage grouse, sagebrush sparrow, bats too, badger, pronghorn, mule deer, coyote, mountain lions, eagles. He trails off as he lunges for another lizard. The sagebrush never ceases to surprise me. This landscape, this ecosystem, is just another example where no one, or rather no white people, saw anything of obvious value. Wetlands, marshes, sand dunes, deserts. We have an unfortunate history of flattening, filling, and paving landscapes we later discover were there for a good reason. The big empty is full of life. We come to the stark edge of the sagebrush where irrigation begins, a sea of sharply shorn emerald grass. Do you think this used to be sagebrush? Balin asks. I mean, this whole soccer complex, all these soccer fields? Probably. The sage grouse is endangered, he says. There used to be millions of them. His mind jumps like this sometimes, but I can see what he's piecing together. And they can only live here in the sagebrush, he says, turning to look at the silver sea behind us. We weave between the neatly marked rectangular boundaries of the other soccer fields to get to Balin's field. Can you tell me more about the sage grouse after your game? I ask. He smiles and takes my hand, swinging our joined arms back and forth. Sure, Mummy. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's get the clapping going. Here we go. Thank you, Charlotte. All right. Next, we have the award-winning author of the essay collections Human Heartbeat Detected, Circadian, and Body Home. Her work has appeared in Salon, The Rumpus, Brevity, and McSweeney's, among many others. She was the fall 2019 writer in residence with the Jack Kerouac Project. She teaches online creative writing classes with Wow Women on Writing and is a full-time freelance editor living in Austin. Welcome, Chelsey Clammer.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having this reading. I'm super excited. I'm reading from, it's a 17-page essay that I've condensed to 5. So this is just a snippet of it. It is called Growth. Some people say I ate my twin. The doctor gave some explanation I didn't understand with the words dermoid, cell, and growth contained within it. My aunt says her teratoma tumor was 8 pounds, what with the teeth and bones inside of it, the signature move of these types of tumors. I don't know how much my nieces weighed when they extracted hers a few years ago. Are teratoma tumors hereditary? My family history says yes, but I don't know. What I say about my teratoma tumor is that my body had a twin when I was microscopic, but that cell didn't grow, and instead my body consumed it, the cell attaching to an ovary eventually and slowly growing to the point of 4.5 inches long by the time it was extracted when I was 40. It was pulled out of an incision in my belly button. This information disturbs me. Either way, whether it was a masticated twin or some dermoid something or the other, I believe the thing had been growing inside me since I was growing inside my mom. So no wonder I walk around during my recovery, resting my arm on my bloated belly, taking selfies in the mirror, holding my inflated stomach because this will be the only baby bump pic I will ever have the opportunity to take because I don't ever want kids. I do all this because something that had been growing inside me my entire life is now gone. I birthed something and I pace around holding its absence. Later, it is the night after the night you broke up with me, and I'm standing next to you, holding my belly, healing, swaying with the music at our friend's weekly concert during my first foray into the world, 9 days after the surgery, after you broke up with me. I'm holding back tears because of how you tore apart our relationship the night before as I clutched my stomach while you broke up with me, trying not to cry then because I knew that would hurt the incisions, would hurt you. And I couldn't go to those levels of pain yet. At the show, sway dancing with the music next to you, I caress the hollowness of my abdomen because I've lost something, yet you're standing right next to me. What is it to have lost something growing inside of you and that you have no control over? A tumor, for instance, or a love. I resisted researching teratoma tumors. I had one night of curiosity, of panic really, when I thought my tumor was twitching. That led to some Googling and finding out that when a tumor bursts, the matter growing inside of it, such as hair, bone, and teeth, may expel through the anus. I don't even understand how that works physiologically, but it was enough information to make me swear I would never again Google teratoma tumor. And so there will be no facts presented here, just experience. Experience. At the annual pap smear I hadn't attended for over 20 years, the nurse practitioner felt around my abdomen, poked the mass that could move from my right hip over to my left, exclaimed, "What is that?" Me, "Oh, that, I don't know. I actually forgot about it. It comes and goes, though mostly I can feel it in the morning. I just thought it was an organ or something." Then she called the doctor in. Then the doctor's eyes widened as she pushed the mass from right to left, said, "What the heck is that?" I originally made the gyno appointment because for 2 months in a row, I had my period for only 1 day. There was zero way I was pregnant, so I didn't know what was going on with my body and the missing menstruation. My suspicion, though, was my weight loss. That weight loss was a result of the first time you became distant. The anxiety of your sudden silence, just barely enough words that you verged on ghosting me, kept food out of my body. I lost 10 pounds I didn't need to lose in 3 weeks. The tumor was hiding behind those pounds. You were going through major work trauma issues, needed to concentrate on you. But I didn't understand the need for space. I wanted to support you through the difficult time. That's what girlfriends do. I didn't want to be pushed away. But you pushed, and I sensed you wanted to break up with me. The hour-long pauses between text messages, the emotionless replies, the lessening frequency of dates. This caused anxiety. A stomach in knots, not knowing what to do with itself in this sudden absence. My digestive tract wept you out of me as I stopped eating. Chewing felt unbearable. Why weren't you texting back? Why weren't you opening up to me? As my weight sank, the tumor appeared, jutting out in the space between my uterus and hip bone. When I lay down, it protruded. When I stood, it squished toward my uterus and hid within my organs. All of the mass weighing me down as your appearance in my life lifted. The spaces left from your emotional leaving allowed my tumor to be seen. Then, a shift, a job quit, a vacation for my 40th birthday taken. Now, we become tight again. We return to the rapid-fire texting, the late-night text exchanges about hopes and dreams and what our community looks like and how we can love and support one another. In the desert for the 40th birthday celebration, there is literally nothing surrounding us. Your lips on mine as we make out underneath the nighttime settling sky. It's an extended moment of swaying, of lips locked, and my fingers twirling your short curly hair and your hands grasping my jutting hips and securing ourselves in yes, in the sense of us. Then you're texting me about, quote, how fucking thankful I am that you stood by me. And how at our friend's weekly concert after we get back together, we hold on to each other during the entire show, your arm tightening around my waist as she sings the lyric, "I won't break up." That song now breaks my heart. I was prepared for a breakup back then. Not 2 months later, not 8 days after my surgery, not this time. Still, I keep a promise to myself as I did 2 months ago. I will exit this gracefully. It's a mantra I repeat as I pace around my kitchen, keep my body in motion to help with the surgery healing, keep me moving as I travel the why now and why this considerations. The tumor is gone, but now this rearrival of anxiety. The weight continues its steady decline, hips stick out more now that the mass and you are missing. I didn't get to say goodbye to the tumor. I remember being wheeled from a curtained room, giving you goodbye hugs and kisses, then being pushed in my hospital bed down a hallway, and then I was awake with shoulders aching and wondering if it was all out of me. The shoulder ache was from the carbon dioxide they pumped my abdomen full of so they could see all the organs to do the laparoscopic surgery. I have no memory of what happened, of being in recovery. I just woke up. At some point, someone must have helped me get dressed. At some point, someone, maybe me, put a hospital-issued gigantic menstrual pad in my hospital-issued disposable maternity boy short underwear. At every point after I woke up, I wanted you there. But you were working, and then the next day you would be driving 40 minutes away to where you would stay at your old boss's house to pet sit for a week. Instead, my friend was there to pick me up, and I made jokes with some hospital worker about how country my friend was in her truck, overalls, and missing teeth. This was my support system. My care then became a delicate practice of controlling chaos. At least that's how it felt for me, going at it alone, and I wasn't even lonely yet. At one point, a few days after you broke up with me, I considered how maybe I was still under anesthesia, that this hot mess of recovery and then this breakup must all just be me still sleeping, still under the power of drugs with something currently being extracted from me. I am still waking up to reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Chelsey. And one more applause, longer applause for all the readers here today. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's always so wonderful to hear readers reading in their own voice. That's one of my favorite things. It just, it's one thing to read what we get in the queue and work with it. And then once we hear the author read in their own voice, it just brings so much more life to the writing. It's really great. I love it so much. Thank you. Thank you again to Dorothy and staff. For those of you, the staff who are here, Deborah and Holly, and the others who couldn't be here tonight. And thank you all for attending and celebrating with us. We're very happy that you were here with us. We had talked about maybe doing a few questions. Authors who are here, do you have time to stay a little bit longer if there's a few questions? Thumbs up. Okay, let's do a few questions. If there are any, let's see. Are there any questions for the readers? And if not, that's okay too.
Or comments.
Just fanning and fawning are welcome.
Joanna?
I just want to say how extraordinary it was to listen to all of you. I honestly, every single one of the essays and the readings was just so heartfelt. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Joanna.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. I'm sure the authors appreciate that.
Yeah.
I have a quick comment.
Yeah.
Thanks to you and Dorothy and everybody there. Like, it's just so cool, all the work that you do to share voices and stories. And, you know, like, I feel like when we share our stories, we share our lives. So it's always cool to like gather and share stories and share our lives with each other. So thank you for making the space in the magazine and here tonight.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Cecilia. I appreciate that. That means a lot to me on our celebrating our anniversary issue too, especially. So thank you so much. Everyone who joined tonight, when you registered, you are now also on the email list for Under the Gum Tree. So we hope that you'll stay in touch. Of course, you don't have to. You can unsubscribe at any time. But we love to stay in touch with folks who are fans and lovers of nonfiction, and we hope that you will stay in touch with us. You can also follow us online at Under the Gumtree. It's Instagram, we're undergumtree.com, and our website is underthegumtree.com. Under the Gumtree was taken on Instagram when I started the profile, so what are you going to do? And then briefly, I was going to share 2 quick opportunities for women writing nonfiction. Every month I host a virtual writing retreat, and that's happening this coming Saturday, so a week from today. And I am also hosting a 30-day writing challenge that is an alternative to NaNoWriMo called NaNoWriMo for Nonfiction Writing Month, just for women writing nonfiction, where we set our own goals and work at our own pace for the month of November. I'm dropping both of those links in the chat. And if you are on the email list, I do share information from time to time to the Under the Gumtree folks as well. But if you only want to get Under the Gumtree news, you will see an option come through your email to say, send me only information about Under the Gumtree. So either way, hope to stay in touch with any of you, any and all of you. Thank you again so much for being here. Thank you again to the readers for being here and for sending us your work and celebrating with us 13 years, y'all. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
And you'll get a link to the recording.
That's right. We're recording. I will be sending the recording out to the authors, of course, and to everyone who registered. You'll get a link if you would like to watch the replay for anything, and share it with your friends who you know that might like nonfiction as well. So I think that'll be it for today. Thank you all for being here again. And so lovely to see faces and connect, and have a great rest of your weekend.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank
Thank you, authors.